Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. Hope you guys are having a great day and welcome to a video that you guys will not stop asking me for. So it's time. It's time. How to build a PvP deck at Visionary. A couple of quick disclaimers, very nice. I am not the best at PvP, nor have I ever claimed that. Nor will I ever be the best, nor will I ever claim it. What I'm trying to say is, even though I do think that I'm qualified to make a video on how to make a good PvP deck, if you want the best advice on how to make your deck, my main recommendation is to go to a high-ranking wizard of the school you're interested in and see how they build a deck. The more and more good, I guess, you get at PvP, the more and more personalized your deck will be, and it'll cater a lot more to your school. So what this is a general guide on how to make a visionary deck with, a few tips for different schools, but what this really is, a beginning point. So that's my disclaimer. Let's get right into it. I'm going to share with you guys 3 big things that I've learned in my years of PvP that has helped me get a warlord on every visionary, so you know that this works at least a little bit. Part 1. Now, no matter what school you are, I think that these are things that you should always have. Right now, the meta is all about making sure that you can get a big hit during Shrike, you can blade up and just do a ton of damage, or you can out-tank your opponents because of your health. Those are the 3 main ways a lot of people are going. Make sure that you have a lot of Shrikes in your main deck. Even if you have a small deck, having 4 or 5 Shrikes is not a problem. You can always just discard the extra ones, and it's always imperative that you pull your Shrike as early as you can, because pulling a Shrike 1 round late could definitely mean the difference between life and death. Related to that, because a lot of people blade up and just go for the hit, or they just have so much damage output and so many offensive stats that a lot of the times they don't even need the Shrike, make sure that you also have shadow enhanced spells that are easy to get. What do I mean by easy to get? There are 2 ways to do this. One, you can just pack hits inside, and because it's a sideboard and it's small, chances are you'll pull a shadow enhanced hit kind of early. The other way to do it, if you don't want to put all hits inside, you can put a lot of hits in main. Just either make it a small deck with a lot of shadow enhanced spells, or make it a big deck with a lot of shadow enhanced spells. You know what I'm saying? And finally, you should always have TC towers in your sideboard. There are many reasons for this. One, it offers an easy way for you to double shield so that a Shrike can be mitigated at least for 1 turn. And it also just gives you a quick defensive option that works in absolutely every single situation. Now that we've gotten the basics, a lot of Shrikes, easy to get shadow enhanced hits and TC towers, let's get into the juicy. Let's look at the main deck. Now, there's some principles that I've come to understand when I've been doing a lot of PvP, and this has been extremely helpful for some schools, especially schools that aren't as good at PvP. So the size of your deck is going to be really important, and it should cater to how offensive you play. The more offensive you play, the smaller you should aim for your deck to be. You gotta pull the right moves in the right order. It's absolutely imperative. If you guys look at my Storms deck, right, I have a lot of Shrikes. I have 1 set shield of every kind, and I have some utility hits that I can use as finisher. Make sure that, there's nothing, that's really gonna clutter up my deck, and I keep all those other hits inside. Now, let's say that you're not playing aggressive. Let's take my Dark Nova Wizard, for example, right? He has an absolutely full deck because he plays super defensive. That's just the truth. I have 63 universal resist. I gotta make sure that I survive everything. I basically just put so many shields. There's dispels, mana burns, minions, diffuses, weaknesses. This is a key example of how a deck can be big if you play defensive. But when I'm playing on my Storm, what I'm really keying in on is a small deck that, works for the situation, and if I get a hit, I can draw it, I can very easily just use it, I can win. So that should be the key distinction when it comes to deck size. Make sure that you're making good choices so you limit the RNG when you really don't need it. Now, the last thing that I think is super important if you're trying to make a deck for PvP is what you're going to do with your sideboard. The third and final tip I have is to know what you're going to do with your sideboard and commit. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people rock decks where their main deck and their side deck does the exact same thing. Your side deck shouldn't just be, and I'm guilty of this and I've started to learn this, your side deck shouldn't just be something you just draw like crazy from because your main deck fails you. It should have a purpose. You should be able to make it so that your main deck works for your side deck and your side deck works for your main deck. One of the most common ways to do it, a lot of people do this, especially when you play schools that are blade oriented, like death, like, you know, myth, you know, even schools that are like, you know, trap oriented, like fire, you know, like anything that involves getting a lot of buffs up before you hit. A lot of those schools, what you'll end up seeing is they'll put a lot of their hits inside, and they'll put a lot of their utilities in main. So for fire, you'll see a lot of people making sure that they pull the fuels out. You know, a lot of people just double fuel fire beetle and then draw from the side and hit. A lot of myth and death wizards just blade up using all their blades from main, and then they draw for hits. Myth will go for the king art, death can go for a skeletal dragon, death can also go for a shrike into the scion. There's a lot of options that you have there. Now, other schools, on the other hand, will prefer to put utilities all in the side and all of their hits and stuff like that in main. Now, I do that on my Nova Wizard. Another example that comes to my mind when I'm thinking about that is Life. In my opinion, Life is one of those schools where utilities inside is a lot better because you always want to be able to draw a heal when you're in an emergency. It's a very reliable place to put heals, shields, weaknesses, dispels, that kind of thing while you set up for a big hit using the tools in your main deck. Now, it doesn't really matter how you do it. What I do recommend is you should find something such that you can use the sideboard and your main deck differently. A lot of people just use hits inside because it's the easiest way to do it. But there's very creative ways that you can go about it. Sometimes, you know, you can make it so that there's a few things in your side deck that you can look for, like shifts and triages, that kind of stuff. Make sure that you put spells that you wouldn't normally be able to use in your side deck. That's exactly what it's meant for. You should always prioritize making sure that triages, shifts, blade removers like Aftershock, you know, any kind of like, you know, utilities and mutates that you can't actually use, make sure you have a good few of those, because that's the only way you can use your sideboard. That differentiates it from the main deck, right? You can use spells that you don't actually learn. But after those are done, right? After you get your, you know, your mutates, after you get your shift, your triage, your 55 towers, maybe your enchanted blades, once you get that done, you know, make sure you save space for what you want it to do. So make sure if it's utility based, focus on the utility. Make it so that you can actually do a lot with it, or make sure that you have a ton of hits in. That's what I've been doing on a lot of wizards, and making it like that is so much easier than relying on the game to give you the right cards at the right time in a huge and cluttered main deck. I hope that makes sense. So what are the major takeaways from this deck building video? I know it's a little all over the place, but here's some main takeaways that you can totally, you know, I can guarantee to you, you have my Warlord's word. In this current meta, always make sure that you have an easily available shadow enhanced hit either in your sideboard or by putting a lot in your main deck, a lot of strikes, and TC towers. Make sure that the more aggressive you play, the smaller your deck is, and the more defensive you play, the bigger your deck is, and the more defensively oriented your deck is. Minions, heals, shields, you saw the Nova, you know what I'm talking about. And finally, make sure that your sideboard and your main deck don't do the same thing, whether that means you split utilities and hits between your side and main, or if it means you put all your heals inside and all your hits in main. If you're like, well, whatever that means to you, make sure that you use the fact that you have two decks technically in order to get the least RNG pulls that you can. Now guys, this isn't the only PvP guide I'm gonna make. I'm probably gonna go in depth into every school, but I thought if I was gonna do a video series or that kind of thing like this, I should start with how to make a PvP deck in Visionary for any school. So let me know if this video will help. This is something that I've learned a lot, you know, by making my deck smaller, by splitting my sideboard and main deck, by, you know, just doing all the things I've talked about. I've actually done a lot better at PvP, and it makes it so that RNG is actually much less of a factor than you would think. Let me know what you guys think of this video. What's a tip that you've learned in PvP that you had given you a lot of rank? That was a great sentence. Good job. Good job. Stupid. What's one PvP tip that's helped you get a lot of rank? Let me know in the comments. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new. There's tons of links in the description, including my Twitch, my Twitter, my Discord, my Instagram. And thank you for all the love. Stay awesome, brother. And yeah, yo.